When I think about all this, coming from an eating disorder background, I think it's really important to understand our body. And so much of the nutrition information that we have comes from social media and TikTok and clickbait headlines, and none of it's actually investigating what's happening within our body. And so I think these tests are really cool just to give us that deeper insight on what's happening within our body so we can care for it and nourish it and nurture it to the best of our ability. I'm Jess, host of the Fuel Your Awesome podcast. I overcame an eating disorder in my early 20s with a mix of faith and empowered eating. Now, I get to partner with food and fitness to create this energy level that can keep up with everything I value, like being a mama, a wife, and a champion for amazing humans like you. The best part, we are flipping the script on what aging healthy looks like, embracing grit, grace, and contagious confidence. Here, nutrition science meets mindset glow-ups to create a health approach that amplifies every area of your life. I have always believed health should be a launching pad, not a glass ceiling, and I'm here to help you make that shift too. This isn't a quick fix, my friend. It's your weekly recharge. Think audio coffee with an edge, served by me and my expert guests to challenge the status quo of health and empower you to fuel your awesome. Hey friend, I'm so glad you're here today. We're talking about a really important topic today. We are talking about how to get your crap together, literally. I'm not talking about balance and juggling all of the things. I'm talking about getting our gut health on point. And the research in the last decade has just blown up with amazing insight. Part of that's in effect of the modern science that we've been able to develop in understanding the microbiome and our gut health. But a lot of it has just revealed how powerful our gut health really is. And so we're going to talk about that piece today and funnel it through the empowered eating method. So y'all can walk away with some really tangible next steps to get your crap together. You ready to do it? Hey, when I started my gut health journey, it was about 8 years ago, when maybe not quite that long ago. I know I had 2 babies under 3. So it was right after my second was born. I went through an incredibly stressful season. It was a stretching season. My husband was on call for both SWAT and as a detective. We were in the middle of a move and we were going through some pretty traumatic family events. And it was a lot. It was a lot. I had a lot that fell on me in that season because my husband had so much responsibility. He had a lot going on in his world. And so Mama had to step up, take care of the babies. I had very little sleep. I was in charge of a lot with the move. It was just, we've all been there. It was a season of stretch. It was a really tough time. Through that season, one of the things that changed was my gut health. I had never had gut issues in the past. I had always been pretty healthy in that department, but that season really impacted how I receive food and consequently my bowel movements. So once that season passed, and I noticed my gut health was not balancing out, it was still a mess, I decided to dive deeper into this gut health world. And it was absolutely astounding, the fruit of understanding what is happening in your gut and giving your gut the proper tools to heal and reflourish. Because the reality is we all go through stressful seasons, and maybe you're in one right now, maybe you're coming out of one, but stress has a serious and legitimate impact on our body, specifically our gut. So our gut takes on a posture depending on what our brain and our emotions are feeling. This is absolutely incredible to me. Do you know how we can go in any country in the world, and if we smile, that is a universal form or posture that our face takes that communicates happiness or joy. It is a universal posture. They have also found the gut has universal postures that it takes on depending on our emotions. So for example, when we are in a high anxiety state, our stomach and our intestines take on a posture that slow digestion in the gut and increase digestion through the intestines. This is oftentimes why people in states of stress or high anxiety feel really full really fast and then have diarrhea, or they pass stool really quickly because things are moving through that intestine faster because of the posture of your gut. Isn't that insane? And that's going to be different depending on whether you're going through a season of anxiety, of depression, of anger. all of these emotional states impact our gut and how it receives food. And unfortunately, what happens is if we go through a season where our gut takes on that posture, or perhaps we're exposed to viruses or pathogens or certain things that also impact that microbiome balance, it can impact how we receive food in the next season and may need some rebalancing. When I think of the empowered eating model, if you guys are new here, empowered eating is what we're here for. So let me just give you like a bird's eye view of what empowered eating is. I want you to think of a Venn diagram. So at the top circle of that Venn diagram is your values. On the left-hand side, that left circle of your Venn diagram is what I call biofeedback. This is what your body is saying about food. And then the third and final circle on the right-hand side is nutrition science. And so empowered eating happens when we pull all three of those elements together, we overlap them, and we are able to have an empowered stance on how we decide to take care of ourselves and feed our bodies. When we are looking at something like gut health is going to fall on those bottom two circles. So it's actually going to overlap between nutrition science and biofeedback. The biofeedback piece, which we're going to talk about today, is your poop report. It is what is happening inside your gut and the byproducts of the food you're eating. There is so much information we can gather from this to learn and listen to what our body is telling us about what's happening inside of it. And then the science piece is where I come in, and we can talk about what we can do to optimize your gut. And so what's really cool in the empowered eating method, and this is where I spend a lot of time when I'm working with clients, is actually overlapping those two to come up with a nutrition plan. So we learn and we listen from the body based on biofeedback, and then we look at the science, overlapping those two, coming up with action items to move forward. So in the case of gut health, the first thing we can do is actually tune in to our biofeedback. What is happening in our poop report? I call it the poop report. If you haven't heard this story before, let me tell you. When I was probably 8 years old. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And so when I was 8, my mom was a nurse and she would work on the weekends. She would take all of us to another nursing friend's house to watch us while she did her shift. And I'll never forget when she would pick us up, she would ask her nurse friend, what is the poop report? She wanted to know all of her 4 children, when they pooped, how often they pooped, and what it looked like. Most of us were in diapers. I was not. I was 8. I remember being mortified. I'm like, why is my mom asking about my poop? It really grossed me out. Now as an adult, I laugh because this is literally what I do all day long is ask people about their poop report. But the reality is my mom was on to something. She was trying to understand what was happening in our little stomachs to know what to do next. And this is the first thing we can do in our own world, is we can get a good thumb on what is happening with our own gut health. So here is what ideal or optimal gut health would look like. We would be going to the bathroom 1 to 2 times a day, looking for a bowel movement that's easy to pass, is snake-like in consistency and form. In addition, we should have some gas is normal. Most people have about like 20 to 40 farts in a day. No joke, I looked that up. Not because of anything to do with my job, because I have 2 little boys that wanted to know how many times the average person farts in a day. This is my world. It's so funny to me because I live in a house with all boys, and they're very like gross boys. They're very like typical stinky, farty boys. And I can say that here because they're proud of it. It's not like they're ashamed of it. But they, so anyways, I talk about poop with my clients. We're talking about farts at home. So they wanted to know that. That is actually a pretty typical amount that somebody will pass gas. But what it shouldn't be overly odorous, it shouldn't be painful, and it shouldn't come with a great deal of bloating. If you are feeling like your body changes significantly from early morning into the evening due to bloating and flatulence, that's going to be a sign that there's some gut dysbiosis going on. Other signs of and when I say gut dysbiosis, what I mean is imbalances in your microbiome within your gut. So other symptoms would be acne, especially like the deep cystic acne. That can be indicative of a gut dysbiosis, hair loss, any skin rashes, any unexplained abdominal pain, and any brain fog. These are going to be some of the main symptoms that we see when somebody has a microbial imbalance within their gut. We want to listen and pay attention to this. Guys, the gut is responsible for so much. Not only does it partake in digestion, I mean, that one's obvious, but it also regulates nutrient absorption. So, for example, if we have an imbalance in some of the primary microbes within our gut, the two top ones are, it's called Firmicutes and Bacteroides. Say that with me. Firmicutes and Bacteroides. Don't worry, there's not a test, but those are the two most dominant gut microbiota within your gut. It makes up about 90% of your gut. But there is a specific balance of these two guys that is required in order to optimally absorb nutrition in your gut. If this starts to get out of whack, like if those little Firmicutes guys start to get overzealous and grow too much, they can take over the Bacteroides guys' space. And now we have like an over-flourishing garden with Firmicutes. I just like saying those names. I'm going to be honest with you. I just think they're really fun to say. Anyways, if we have this imbalance, it can actually change how many calories we absorb from the foods we're eating. So we're not optimally absorbing the nutrition going into our gut. We're absorbing more calories, less micronutrition. The gut is also responsible for immune support and immune function. It's estimated that about 70% of our immune system comes from our gut and the health of our microbiome. What is most fascinating to me is the mental health connection. There is a really strong association between what is happening in our gut and what is happening in our head. And that's why I brought up the brain fog, because if we have byproducts accumulating in our gut that then travel to our brain, we're just not going to see things as clearly. We're going to feel a little bit of that fatigue and fog throughout our day. Just like I was speaking earlier about how when we have an emotional state, like our head is in a certain mental space, that impacts our gut. Our gut does the same thing. If our gut is in a certain state, it's going to impact our brain. It's that bi-directional relationship that we know is so, so closely connected. I found this absolutely insane article that took me down a whole rabbit hole when I was doing some research on this lately. Guys, there was an entire criminal case that argued how impactful our gut health is on our mental state. So listen to this. It's called the Twinkie defense. If you want to Google it, you can go down this rabbit hole with me. But there was a trial of a man named Dan White. It was called the People vs. White. And his legal team argued that his consumption of junk food, including Twinkies, was a symptom of his underlying depression. And what his legal team claimed was that this reflected a diminished mental capacity, which lessened his culpability for the murders, guys, of San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and City Supervisor Harvey Milk. So while the defense never stated that the Twinkies in and of themselves directly caused White's actions, the media actually fixated on this detail, and they came up with this term called the Twinkie defense. And what it was describing was the improbable legal arguments that actually ultimately got Dan White's conviction down-regulated from first-degree murder to voluntary manslaughter. Guys, they were able to show that his consumption of some of these foods impacted his gut health so much that it caused his depression symptoms to become so severe, it led to murder. I mean, that is so extreme. That's crazy. Now, obviously, I'm not saying Twinkies can cause murder. I do not. I mean, that's a whole crazy topic. But what I do think it shows is just how powerful our gut health really is. And we need to really take it seriously when we're looking at our mental health and we're looking at our overall health. We cannot ignore the role our gut health and nutrition plays on our mental health. So yeah, isn't that crazy? The Twinkie defense. Go down that rabbit hole. It's weird. All right, so let's look at what actually impacts gut health. So when I think of a healthy gut, we can read it first and foremost by monitoring our bowel movements and some of our bloating and GI symptoms. Internally, how we define a healthy gut is having a dense and diverse microbiome. So that means we have a lot of different types of microbial makeup within our gut. And we also have a thick layer of it. And the density piece is because that density actually protects our endothelial or our intestinal lining from any damage or inflammation or parasites or pathogens that might make their way into our gut. I mean, it really is our first line of defense. I kind of think of it like if you have a donut and that hole in the middle of the donut, if you stick your finger in the donut hole, your finger is like technically in the middle of the donut, but it's not in the donut. Do you catch what I'm saying? This is what your intestines are. Like when food comes into our bodies, food is in our body once we swallow it, but it's not technically transitioned into our bloodstream until it crosses that endothelial lining, just like our finger is like in the donut, but it's not actually inside of the donut. But standing between the food and its entrance actually into our bloodstream, into the inside of our body, is our microbial makeup. And so the density and diversity is really what filters our food, and it's going to help us make more of our food, digest more nutrition. That microbial makeup within our gut actually eats some of the food, and there's a byproduct that they produce that can go to our brain, and it can be inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. Here's where modern science has gotten really, really cool. We now have the ability to dive deeper in to our body's biofeedback. So the first layer to look at, which I've already talked about, is actually monitoring your bowel movements. There is a really cool chart called the Bristol stool chart. You can Google that and find it anywhere. I have it on a coffee mug. But this chart is identifying different bowel movement patterns so that you can identify where you fall. And ideally, again, we're going to want to have a bowel movement that is snake-like in consistency and shape. And then anything on the opposite ends of that spectrum are going to indicate an imbalance. So, for example, if you have more loose stool, or like I call it like cow patty style stool, this might be indicative of an imbalance. Whereas on the flip side, if you have more compacted or hard stools, this is indicative of constipation, and your body may be saying, hey, we need more hydration, we need more fiber. But there's a lot that we can learn from just looking at our stool and comparing it to that Bristol stool chart. There was actually a study that looked at the use of this stool chart, and they found that it has a diagnostic accuracy of 85% when correlating stool type with gastrointestinal transit time. So we can actually use that to figure out how quickly food is moving through your gut and if it's at an appropriate pace for optimal nutrient absorption. Isn't that cool? So cool. So that's going to be layer one. Beyond that, this is where I had mentioned modern science has gotten so cool. We can actually utilize some amazing tests that are on the market to better understand what's going on in your gut. So there's two that I like to use. One is a food sensitivity test, and the other is what's called a GI mapping tool, which stands for Gastrointestinal Microbial Assay Plus. So I want to talk about what these two are and what they're telling us. Now, food sensitivity tests, I'm really careful with these because I've seen so many people order the quick test online, get their list of foods, and then never eat those foods again. I mean, I've had clients come to me that said, Jess, I did a food sensitivity test 9 years ago and it told me not to eat gluten and I haven't touched it since. Guys, that's not how these work. So let's clear that up right now. A food sensitivity test actually measures IgG molecules and other immunoglobulin responses to certain and specific foods, and that's based on your current microbial state. So based on the current status of your body. Now, here's the thing about our gut. It is highly malleable. It's going to change depending on our stress level, what we're eating, how we're resting, how we're sleeping, what kind of probiotics we're giving it. So what you tested for on a food sensitivity test, even 6 months ago, might look different today, depending on how you're caring for your body. These tests can be really powerful when you're looking at trying to identify foods that are triggering an immune response. So oftentimes I'll run these tests on folks who have been recommended the FODMAP diet. The FODMAP diet is a food elimination diet that's often recommended in response to like inflammatory bowel disease or inflammatory bowel syndrome, either one, IBD or IBS. I like the food sensitivity test better than the FODMAP diet because the FODMAP diet is, I think, really challenging to follow. It's like, let's remove everything. And people come to me going, I can't eat anything. And that causes much more concern for me when people don't know what to eat. And the FODMAP diet is just so extensive. So if your doctor's recommended that to you, here's what I think we should do. I think we should schedule an appointment. I think we need to meet and actually talk about which foods are causing symptoms. We can run some more testing and get you a more narrowed down list. And on top of that, actually provide you with what you can eat and need to eat, what's healing to the body. That's my biggest beef with the FODMAP diet, is it's just, here's your giant list of what you can't eat. And I think that puts people in this state of stress. I mean, if I just got that giant list of what I can't eat, I would be stressed too. What can I eat? We need to really flip that narrative. So I like the food sensitivity test in that setting because I think it gives us a more narrow target to work with. And it lets us know, which are might be the biggest culprits. So on that food sensitivity test, they test 88 different foods and they measure 4 different antibodies. And then they see which ones are giving you the highest reaction, which one is the body the most upset about. And then what we do is we pull those foods out for about 6 to 12 weeks, add in some additional supplements as needed, let the body heal. And then we try to add those foods back in again and we monitor your symptoms. I think of it kind of like if you have a kid that has a scab on their arm, if they keep scratching that scab, it's never going to heal. But if we put a Band-Aid on it, we take a step back, we get them to stop picking at it, eventually it will heal. And then, if they ever rub that skin again, the wound has healed. And so there's no irritation there. That's the same idea behind the food sensitivity test. We remove some of the foods that are causing this irritation or activating this irritation, let the gut heal, and then the gut can hopefully receive those foods again. It's a really great tool, and I've had such amazing success with clients. So much more than just the FODMAP diet. But I will tell you, it's a little controversial. I have quite a few dietitian friends that say, Jess, why are you running those? The accuracy is a little off. And I'm going, okay, I'm just transparent about that with my clients. And I let them know, okay, here's our options. We can run this test and get a more narrowed target, or you can just keep throwing spaghetti at the walls with your FODMAPs diet. So that's my argument with it. There is enough science to have my attention when it comes to food sensitivity tests. There's enough science that most insurances will cover a food sensitivity test. To me, that is a much better platform to work with than just guessing with the FODMAP diet. So that's my personal opinion there. Okay, so we have that tool. Let's talk about the GI mapping. Man, this one is fascinating. The GI map test stands for Gastrointestinal Microbial Assay Plus. It actually uses DNA PCR technology to measure bacteria, parasites, yeast, fungi, viruses, and additional digestive markers in stool. So it actually gives us a map of what's happening inside your microbiome. It allows us to identify any dysbiosis. So like if certain even healthy bacteria ratios are off, we can go in there and see that. What I like about this test and what makes it different from other tests is that it's not just looking at like positive or negative. It's not just saying like, hey, you have this parasite, yes or no. It's saying you have this parasite to this degree. You have this healthy bacteria to this degree. It actually measures per colony forming unit, or so in other words, you would have 1 cell per gram of stool of that particular pathogen or bacteria that it's looking at. So detailed. It's so cool. This one really gives us an idea what's happening in the gut and how to counterbalance any imbalances that are happening. So I have to tell you, I did this test. Oh my gosh. It is kind of funny. I mean, it's a poop test. You're literally testing your stool. So you order a box in the mail. It gets sent to you. All the instructions come there. There's gloves. I mean, we make it as sterile as possible, but I just couldn't help but laugh because I'm taking my pre-posted FedEx bag to the FedEx store, and this is during Christmas time. I'm all happy taking my stool sample in. The guy I give it to is super nice, and in my head, I'm just thinking to myself, what would he think if I told him that my stool sample is inside that FedEx bag? I didn't have the guts to tell him, but I might do it next time. Stay tuned. If I do, I'll make a video of it and post it on social. Anyways, you send this gut health test or this stool sample in. We get an incredible report, and we are able to not only recommend probiotics, but which probiotics your body needs to rebalance, which antivirals or antifungal properties or supplements we can add to help remove any opportunistic bacteria or fungi or parasites that are inside your body. It is so cool and so powerful. Guys, this is really taking biofeedback to that next level. It's measuring what's happening in our body so that we can then take nutrition science and overlap those two and come up with a really incredible plan. It's it's just mind-blowing. Now, I know y'all might not be as nerded out about this as I am. I obviously get really excited about this, but that's why I have this job, right? I can take this and translate it for you, giving you actionable steps so that you can heal your gut without, we can go as far down the poop rabbit hole as you want to go when we talk. I might go a little farther, but bottom line, it gives us this incredible platform to heal any gut dysbiosis that is happening within your body. Furthermore, it's going to allow us to identify any potential pathogens or parasites that we have. It's estimated that about 50% of the American population carries something called H. pylori, which is a opportunistic bacteria. So it's a bacteria that, if it has the ability to take over your microbiome and cause infection and inflammation, it will. And unfortunately, over time, if that is exposed and it has the right environment, it can actually lead to chronic inflammation and even cancers. And this is something this test looks for. And so it'll let us know, hey, we have the potential for this. So here's what we need to do from a nutritional perspective, from a probiotic perspective, to not only manage this, but keep it at bay so that it never has the opportunity to cause harm within our body. I mean, it's just amazing what we can do. When I think about all this, coming from an eating disorder background, I think it's really important to understand our body. And so much of the nutrition information that we have comes from social media and TikTok and clickbait headlines, and none of it's actually investigating what's happening within our body and how we are healed, how we can communicate and listen and learn from our own body. And so I think these tests are really cool just to give us that deeper insight on what's happening within our body so we can care for it and nourish it and nurture it to the best of our ability. Guys, this is so exciting. So if you're wanting to dive into this, there's a few different ways we can do this. We're actually doing this inside our program called the Well Fueled Academy. We're also doing it with our one-on-one clients. You can find information below, but I would be so excited to walk through this with you. And if you're listening to this and you're like, this is like really interesting, but also overwhelming, don't worry. That's why I have a job. That's what we're here for, is to help you walk through this in the most empowered way. You better believe you're not going to be getting a list of foods you can't eat from me. Instead, you will be getting a list of foods your body loves and your body will respond well to, as well as how we can optimize supplementation to actually give our body what it needs. No more just buying supplements like crazy and having expensive pee. I'm not here for that. Let's actually figure out what your body needs and give it the support it needs to have the energy that you need to do all that you have going on in a day. When I went through my gut healing journey, it was so fruitful, and I was so grateful for it because it was coming out of a stressful season. I had my 2 kids. I've always been a working mama, and I knew the older I got, I didn't want to fit that narrative that getting older meant getting more tired. My husband and I waited a while to have kids, and I knew I wanted to be a mom that had energy and could play with them despite being a working mom, despite being an older mom. And yeah, I didn't want that. And this was a tool that really helped me maximize my energy. And I want that for you too. I'm really against this narrative that getting older means getting tired. I don't want that. I think with age comes wisdom, and we should have more energy because we start to let go of that. We don't care as much about what other people think. We start really getting secure in who we are. There's so much beauty that comes with age. Our energy should match that. And I think this is a really cool tool to help us do that. Guys, if you want any more information on that, check out the links below. I'd love to talk more with you on that. And in the meantime, like my mom did with us kids when we were little, take inventory of your own poop report. Get an idea of what's going on. Try not to be grossed out by it. Instead, just listen and learn. Your body has a lot it wants to tell you. Until next time, my friend, I hope you have an awesome day. Cheers and happy eating. I am so glad you stopped by. I know you're leaving today with so much insight, but let's make it actionable. Take a moment right now to choose one key takeaway and write it down. Putting it in writing is the first step to making it happen. And remember, it's small, consistent changes that spark the biggest health transformations. If you're ready to dive in deeper into empowered eating, check out the show notes for free resources and details on how to connect with me and the Empowered Eating team. If today's episode lit a spark, my friend, I'd be so grateful if you'd share the love. Leave a review and tag me on social media @JessBrownRD By spreading the message, it helps us reach even more people who need empowered eating in their life. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you're always in the loop. Until next time, my friend, I hope you have a beautiful day. Cheers and happy eating.